Hello class, for this final tutorial we will work through exercise 1 at the end of chapter 12 of your textbook. Bear in mind this will require us to work through the entire tutorial from chapter 11, so you may need to flip back to chapter 11 before we come back to 12 to apply materials and background sun sky images. So let's get started. I'm going to use the ACAD 3D template. Flip off my grid, and it's already set to architectural feet and inches, which is fine for what we're doing here. What I'm going to start with is go to just 2D wireframe and top view, get it flipped around correctly. It's kind of easier to do our baseline work in this view. So we'll start with a rectangle. Dimensions are 30 by 30. Use our scroll wheel to zoom out, or double click that scroll wheel to zoom extents. Computer's not running slow like mine. Another rectangle, dimensions are 20 by 20. And then I can move these to the correct orientation as well. Should come down F8 on, come down 5. Now to make our partitions, I believe I'm going to do maybe 5.5 by 5.5, and that would be moved. I'm going to move it 3/4 of an inch down and 3/4 of an inch to the right, assuming we have maybe 1/8 we're making these partitions out of. Mirror those guys around. We'll need another one here that's maybe 6 by 5.5, 0.75. So I should have waited, but we'll mirror him across. He gets a little bit bigger room in the middle. And then these guys will copy just like so. Now our partitions aren't perfect. Here we've got a full inch, so I'll stretch that up 0.25. If you remember the stretch command, S enter, and then we can left drag over our line work we want to stretch and get it down. So now we have exactly 3/4 of an inch, or the thickness of a 1x, and I think we're looking good. So I'm going to switch to a southeast isometric view, and now I'm going to use extrude to extrude this base down 0.5. Now the next command we're going to introduce is PushPull, developed by Google SketchUp, now available in AutoCAD, and it's smart. I can do a single object or multiple objects. I'm going to hover till I get all of my partitions on the screen, and then come up to 7.25, which is the height of a 1x8. So now we have, if I switch to my shades of gray, we have in one command unioned and subtracted the appropriate line work, which is really helpful. Next step is to apply circles for access to each birdhouse. Make sure your dynamic UCS is flipped on, and you can also click on the 3 little lines on the right to flip it on if you don't see it visible. So if I do a circle command and hover over this face, the UCS automatically orients. So now I can start my circle, maybe a 2.5 inch diameter. Move it down maybe 3, copy it, maybe to the, oops, copy it to the right, maybe 6, and then to the left 6. Very good. Now we can mirror all of that line work, sorry, just the circles, about the midpoint of our wall, and they should be on the other side now. They are. Now we'll do a circle on this face, and you'll notice if I hover over that face, my UCS auto orients, the circle's in the right plane, makes it real quick. I don't have to monkey around with that UCS to do that one, and then I can mirror that to the other side. Now, this all said, I can use push-pull to quickly extrude and subtract these circles to create openings. So press pull, select the area. Now the trick is not to select the boundary, but in the middle of the circle. Okay, middle of the circle. If I want to do multiple, I hit M, enter, pick the other two in the middle, space bar, and then I'm going to drag to the left, turn off my O snap with F3, so I just have free-handed dragging to the left, 0.75. We've cut those out. Do it again for this side. Boom. Orbit. It does remember our last distance we've entered, so if I just hit spacebar, it should automatically go that distance. Pick that circle, and all I have to do is hit spacebar. So pick the circle, M, enter for multiple, 2, 3, spacebar, drag that way and just hit enter. It remembered my 0.75. So now I have all of my holes bored. It's time to duplicate this for floor number 2. I copy it off to the right, 3D rotate. Pick all of those objects. It says base point. Just pick a corner. F3 to turn on that O-snap. Go about the blue axis and hit 90 enter. So 3D rotate gets you like this. And now I can move from the very corner of this guy to the top of the corner of this guy. So they're stacked up. And let me do that again because I don't think you saw what I did. If I do move, pick my line work from base point. Now when I drop it on here, everything's doubled up. Okay, it's like, oh man, I've got to move it up. How am I going to move it up? Here's the trick. M, enter, P, enter. P is one of my favorite commands. It selects your previous selection. So I can quickly move it up 7.25, and I've only got the upper floor picked. So it's kind of cool. M, enter, P, enter. You can use that with any command. It's P selects the previous item that was selected. So that looks good. Now we're ready for our roof. For the roof, we'll do a rectangle. Again, they want 30 by 30. We'll give it thickness. We can use PushPull to give it thickness of 0.5. And then we're going to learn a new command, which I believe was imprint. So I need a line to imprint. This is going to represent our peak or our ridge. So there's the line. Type in imprint. Select a surface. Click. And then it says select an object to imprint. Click. So I didn't hit enter. I just clicked and then clicked. And it's hard to pick that line. There it went. You got to hover a little bit to get it to highlight. It says delete the source object. Y enter for yes. And then again, and it's gone. So now it's got this line imprinted. You may say, well, what good does that do to me? I just have these weird grip points now. If you escape out of any command and hold down the control key, if I hover, you'll see I can see faces now when I hover. I'm going to hover right over that center line and click. And you'll see I got this red grip point. Now if I pick that and come up, maybe 6, I have a nice gabled roof, simplest of all roofs. Now they want us to add some architectural features, so let's go to they call the left view. I'm going to move this to the right a little. Move this to the right so it's out of the way. And to make these features, it's kind of a pain, so I'm going to go to my 2D wireframe visual style, and it's always easier to work in 2D when you're doing some more complex line work like this. So I'm going to draw UCS enter. Make sure my UCS is right. Let's do UCS face. Place my UCS right on this face. I don't like how it's on an angle. Let's do UCS 3 point. 1, 2, 3. That's better. Now if I do a line straight down from the peak, 0.5, that'll be a reference line. I'm sorry, I screwed up. UCS 3 point X. Y Z is going straight up. So I've got a little bit of an issue. You see how the y-axis went down? It was picking in the back corner instead of the front corner. So if I do UCS X enter 90 enter, now it flipped my y-axis up, which is where I want it. Okay. Now we can actually work with this. Something's weird here now. my UCS is not perfectly aligned, so I'm going to do UCS world to get back into a good place, and I'll do UCS 3P from my 3D view. Sorry for the multiple attempts here. We'll set our X and Y axis in this view. That looks good. Now if I go to what's now the top view and flip it around, now my X and Y is oriented correctly. Sorry for that wild goose chase here. Got to turn off my dynamic UCS so it doesn't mess around with me. Now I'm going to draw 0.5 down. That's better. Polyline. So I'm drawing a polyline on the face of this 3D object to represent a depression that I'm going to make. Boom, just like that. Now if I orbit away, you'll see that this polyline is right on the face. What I'm going to do is do press, pull, and just hover inside of this polyline, click, and take it back, we'll say 2. And by doing so, I've created a depression and my polyline remained, which is good because I forgot to mirror it. So I'm going to MI mirror that polyline to the other side. Now to do so, I've got to do UCS enter, enter, go back to a world UCS. I can mirror that to the other side. There we go. Now I can press pull that side, which I can't see it unless I almost saw it there. Let me orbit around. Press pull, my cursor should be able to see it now. 2. Alright. Now I can erase those source lines. And if I go to a realistic or shades of gray, got one more line to erase here. Orbit that around, and that one's gone too. So I just made a polyline triangle, I pressed it back in. Now the last feature they want is a circle that's depressed. So I'm going to turn back on that dynamic UCS and do a circle on this face. So hover over the face and then come down to midpoint, diameter 2.5 again. Move it up, maybe 3. Now if I'm going to go ahead and mirror it to the other side so I don't have to do this twice. So from the midpoint, even though I can't see it, it should be back there. Now if I press pull, that circle, and I go, oops, I just went an unknown distance. Press pull, circle. If I hover toward the inside and type in 0.5, I just have a 1/2 inch depression, which is what I'm after here for the look. Come around to the other side, press pull, go just on the inside of that circle, drag your cursor backward, 0.5, there it is. Now let's place this roof where it belongs. So pick the roof, go from the very corner and drop it on the corner of the second floor. And you guessed it, we need to jack the roof up exactly 7.25 so it sits on top of the 1x4s, and when we orbit around you'll see that it's all connected nicely. Now the last thing to do line work wise before we start applying materials is put a post on this guy. So I'm going to put a line across there just to find the midpoint, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle. My dynamic UCS is on, so I can do it down here. Dimensions are 3.5 by 3.5 for a 4x4. Now to get that rectangle perfectly centered, I need to do another series of lines from corner to corner of the rectangle. And now I can move the rectangle. Oops. Lots of line work going on here in the background. That line didn't go in the right spot. So when you have a situation like this where you have too much going on, sometimes it's helpful to maybe go to just a hidden, and it's still kind of hard to find it. And I can hold down shift and hit spacebar to cycle between the selections too. That's better. Now if I pick that rectangle, I can move it from midpoint to midpoint and then delete my construction lines. Hold down shift and hit spacebar if you need to find selections here. I'm going to leave it. We'll leave those construction lines on there. Now let's press pull. If I had layers, I could be turning layers on and off to make this easier. Oh, I gotta delete those lines or press pull won't work. Alright, bear with me. Got one. Got the other one. Is my rectangle complete? It is. Now if I press pull, thanks for hanging with me, go inside of that object, bring it down 72, it gives me a 6-foot pole. Alright, there it is. Now before we apply materials, let's create some ground underneath this guy. So I'm going to do a rectangle from the corner point. We'll make this like 300 by 300, something like that. Now I can move it about 150 this way and about 150 that way. So now I have ground underneath it. And that UCS is bugging me, so I'm going to do UCS O for origin and move it down here so it's out of the way. Okay, now as we begin to apply materials, let's go to a realistic visual style, otherwise you won't see the materials that you apply, and type in the materials command if you don't have the ribbon toolbar for materials, like I don't. And then you'll see your materials. So we only thing in here is our miscellaneous, which is currently applied. So we pick our finishes. So maybe I want that that birdhouse to be. We'll pick. Now I can't quite read all these, so I'm going to make these bigger. So let's do whiskey beechwood. So if I click the up arrow, it adds it to my list up above. That's the birdhouse. Let's make the roof. We'll pick something that's metal. Make the roof copper. And then the post should be some sort of wood, right? And there's so many to pick from that you'll just kind of play around till you find something that looks appropriate. Do brown maple. Click the up arrow. Now that you have these, drag the little preview or the thumbnail to the material you want it applied to, and it will apply that. Now since I push-pulled that post off of the base, those two are combined. If I try and explode the two, then it completely explodes and it doesn't separate faces. So this is one shortcoming of AutoCAD. You have to be intentional when you're building the 3D objects, otherwise you can't apply faces or materials to specific faces. So let's do the siding. This was the copper, that was the roof. So copper roof, looks kind of cool. And then we had, I guess I didn't have, yeah I did, this is our beechwood up here. There's our beechwood for the second floor. Alright, so if I orbit around a little bit, there we go. You'll see we have a different color wood for the first floor, second floor, and then a copper roof. The only thing we haven't applied is the ground outside, and I don't know, in my default I have the generic library that I have anything good for the ground. How about aqua stucco, maybe that'll look okay. Click the up arrow, drag it down, and you can't apply material to just a polyline like this, so I have to make that a region. I could also give it thickness, but I can make it a region so it doesn't have thickness, and then I can apply that material. So there we have all of our materials applied for our birdhouse. So it looks something like this. And the last thing to do is to apply our background. I think the question actually says use the sun and sky background. So if you don't have that toolbar, like I don't, just type in background, pick sun and sky in the drop down, and by default mine says it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's fine. That works. Hit OK. And you'll notice that it changes here. The last thing we can do if you want to get real fancy is render. And this does take some time depending on your settings, but when you render, it takes this to a more photorealistic level, and it's just plugging along here 15-16%, and it'll render through this so I have a good presentation quality image. But that's the steps to work through this. The intent here is to get you familiar with the press pull command, applying materials, and then setting up lighting and sun and sky background options as well. So thank you for your time. Good luck. There is no wrong answer. Feel free to use your own proportions and your own materials as you work through this assignment. Thanks for your time.